Hello everyone. Obviously I am not Godless Cranium. I run a smaller YouTube channel called Nick's Radio, and Cranium was generous enough to offer me the opportunity to do a guest video on his channel. A questionable decision, however much I appreciate it, because as most of you know, much of Cranium's content is atheist content. And I am not an atheist. I am merely an agnostic. All the same, being an agnostic is still a really good way to get into hell, or so I've been told. Now, I'm someone who thinks that the existence of an afterlife is actually pretty likely. I kind of doubt that the religious have a really clear idea of what the afterlife is, or who goes where or why. All the same, if you could convince me that Christianity in particular was true, that Christ's teachings were to be believed, then I still wouldn't be concerned. I'd be pretty well certain that, yeah, I'm going to the right place. To my mind, religion, particularly Christianity, often resembles a game, a lifelong game. And the object of the game is to get into heaven. To make sure that people know how to achieve that object, there are rules that are written. There's a great big extensive rule book. A lot of games have their rule books, and I haven't read all the rule books. Read this rule book though. Read this rule book more than once. Read it cover to cover a couple times in my life. And like most people who read this rule book on their own, without the guidance of people telling you what every word in it means, I found things in it that I did not expect. Most of them were not things that made me feel comfortable at all with the truth, honesty, and morality of the rule book. Like Mark Twain said, it ain't the parts of the Bible I can't understand that bother me, it's the parts I do understand. All the same, there are a few parts that are very encouraging. Who gets into heaven exactly? Well, I'm going to start by asking the question, what is the most important rule? Now, they don't call them rules in the rule book, they call them commandments, because, that has a weight of authority that the word rule just doesn't have. There are some translations that actually use the word rule instead of commandment, though, and it is obviously what they are. But if you were to ask Jesus Christ himself, the central figure, the man who has all the answers, if you were to ask him, what is the most important rule, what would he say? Because, according to this book, he was asked that once, and he had an answer. And it's a passage that some people will be familiar with, but it always surprises me how many people, sometimes even how many Christians, are not aware of it. And the ones that are aware of it, a lot of the time tend to de-emphasize it. They do not focus on it the way you would think they would, considering how important Christ himself said it was. But it's in the book of Matthew, chapter 22. Hit the wrong bookmark. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? And Jesus said unto him, and the next several lines are written in wonderful red ink, so you know that Jesus himself is talking. This is the guy to listen to. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Other translations will sometimes say all thy strength or all thy being, but it pretty much boils down to the same thing. Love God with every bit of yourself. And that seems to coincide pretty well with what people would have me believe. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. The second is like unto it. The second is the same. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. He is saying in no uncertain terms there that love of other people, treating other people well, is a love of God. So if the great rule is love God with all of your being, and the second rule that is the same as it is love other people, then if I'm a decent person, I'm following the most important rule. How important is this rule exactly? On these two commandments, still in red ink by the way, on these two commandments hang all the law and all the prophets. Every other rule, every teaching of every prophet should focus on and center around these two ideas. Christ is telling you in no uncertain terms that this is the idea you need to be aware of. This is what it's all about. Everything else depends on this idea. Be good to other people, because that is love of God. That passage, though, doesn't actually tell you that following this important rule gets you into heaven. For that, I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. Same book, Book of Matthew, chapter 25. And what I'm about to read is entirely in red ink. So again, it's Jesus himself talking. So you don't got to listen to me, but you can't ignore him. And before him shall beget... Oh, here we are. I'll start here at verse 31, chapter 25. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. You want to be a sheep, by the way, not a goat. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, and the goats on the left. This is just so that you know which side he's talking to. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, those are the sheep, remember, Come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. Sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and give you food, and see you thirsty and give you drink, and so on? And the king shall answer, and say unto them, Verily, I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. These my brethren. And remember, at this moment, he's got all the nations gathered before him, all people. All people are his brethren, and if you do what's right to the least of them, you have done it for him. That's how you get into heaven. Again, in no uncertain terms. He goes on, unfortunately, to tell you who doesn't get into heaven. That's the people on the other side. The king shall answer... here we go. Then he shall say unto them on the left, those are the goats, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no meat, and thirsty, and you gave me no drink, and so on. And they'll say, When did we see you hungry or thirsty? And he gives them pretty much the same answer there. Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. But that's a passage that tells you which people get into heaven and which people don't, which people win the game. The people who did right for other people, the people who were moral, the people who were good and decent. There are people who say, well, good works isn't what it's all about. Other people say it is. Christ said it was. Now, it is easy, very easy, to go through the rule book and find rules that will tell you something different. Given that this interpretation is available and that it is Christ's own words, why you would choose a darker interpretation, I'm not certain. Actually, I am pretty certain. I suspect that most people just prefer an exclusive religion so that people got to go to their clubhouse and other people aren't allowed. But whether that's everyone's motive or not, it does create a problem when you have those contradictions. The most famous contradiction, it was the most famous verse in the Bible, and that's John 3:16. Everyone knows that number. You see it written on athletes' blazers and jerseys and pretty much everywhere. And I'm sure you've all heard it. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. This is in red ink again. Jesus is saying that himself. Whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That seems to say the opposite of the passage I just read, which one is true. On its own, 3:16 seems to contradict what I've said. But Jesus wasn't done talking. He kept going. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already. Not looking any better yet. Because he that hath not believed in the name of the only begotten, he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. This is the condemnation, that light is come into the world, and men loved darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For every one that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deed should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God. Now, there's more than one way to interpret that reasonably cryptic little passage, but in light of the other lessons that I've read, it almost sounds to me like people who do evil deeds, people who do wrong, people who are immoral, are the disbelievers. And the ones who do right are believers by their nature. That would make belief something, not just that you say or think, or even that you do. Belief would be something that you are. And that's actually kind of a rather lovely idea. And again, it would make Christianity very inclusive. Having read that, when I have had to discuss these topics with Christians in the past and told me, well, are you sure you're getting into heaven? Well, it depends. If Jesus was telling the truth, then yeah, I'm getting in. Now, I'm not the most likable kind of guy. You might not invite me to your family barbecue. But if you're broken down at the side of the road, I'm going to be the guy that's going to stop and help you. At a party, if a girl has had way too much to drink, I'm going to be the guy who will make sure no one takes advantage of her. I've done it before. That's the kind of guy that I am. I've gotten a call at 3 in the morning. We're afraid someone's coming to the house. Can you help us get the kids to another place? I've escorted people out of trouble, put myself in harm's way. I've helped other people when it doesn't help me. Even little things I count. I've helped people move from one house to another, which is something everyone does, I know, but I've done it more than once for people I really don't fucking like. Maybe not a great weight on that scale, but it's not nothing. So I'm not worried about myself or anyone else who is moral. Now, I can't speak to Cranium's morals. I don't know him personally. I get the impression that he's a decent guy, that he can probably say the same thing. So if so, the two of us, looks like we're in, even though we're not believers. Before I finish this, I want to read something else that has very little to do with what I've been talking about. It's just something that I found entertaining, something that I thought Cranium's audience and Cranium himself might get a kick out of. But I recently reread The Stranger by Albert Camus. And this little passage tickled me. It always does. But he cut me off and urged me one last time, drawing himself up to his full height and asking me if I believed in God. I said no. He sat down indignantly. He said that was impossible. All men believe in God, even those who turn their backs on him. That was his belief. And if he were ever to doubt it, his life would become meaningless. Do you want my life to become meaningless? He shouted. As far as I could see, it didn't have anything to do with me. And I told him so.